Francisco Vázquez de Coronado was the first known explorer to venture into Nebraska. His expedition in the year 1541 brought the initial recorded European presence to the central Great Plains region that includes what later became the state of Nebraska. This report presents a factual account of that historic venture, drawn from the surviving chronicles of the expedition and the long-standing interpretations in Nebraska history. Francisco Vázquez de Coronado was born around the year 1510 in Salamanca, Spain, to a noble family. He arrived in New Spain, which is present-day Mexico, in the year 1535. By the year 1538, he had risen to the position of governor of Nueva Galicia. In the year 1540, the Viceroy Antonio de Mendoza selected Coronado to command a major expedition in search of the legendary 7 cities of Cibola. These cities were rumored to hold vast riches based on earlier reports from explorers and friars. The expedition departed from Compostela on the 23rd of February in the year 1540. It consisted of approximately 400 European men-at-arms, along with 1,300 to 2,000 indigenous allies from Mexico, Franciscan friars, servants, and large numbers of livestock. A separate sea component under Hernando de Alarcón provided support. The goal was to explore claimed territory for Spain and seek wealth through conquest and discovery. The main force traveled northward through what is now northwestern Mexico and into the regions of present-day Arizona and New Mexico. In July of 1540, the expedition reached the Zuni Pueblos, which the Spaniards identified as Cibola. Instead of golden cities, the explorers found modest stone and adobe villages. A detachment under Garcia López de Cardenas became the first Europeans to view the Grand Canyon and the Colorado River. The expedition established winter quarters near Teguex along the Rio Grande, in what is now New Mexico, during the winter of 1540 to 1541. Relations with local Pueblo peoples became strained and led to conflict. In the spring of 1541 at Pecos Pueblo, known to the Spaniards as Sicuye, the expedition encountered a Plains Indian captive whom the Spaniards called El Turco. This guide described a prosperous land to the east called Quivira, with tales of gold and rich settlements. These stories revived hopes of finding treasure. Guided by El Turco and another Indian named Isopete, Coronado led his army eastward onto the Great Plains, beginning in April of 1541. The expedition crossed vast grasslands that stretched endlessly in every direction. Chronicles describe the terrain as flat and without landmarks, which made navigation challenging. The party encountered large herds of bison animals never before seen by the Europeans. They also met nomadic bison hunting groups, whom the Spaniards called querechos and teyas. These groups used dogs to pull travois for transporting goods. After reaching deep canyons, likely Palo Duro Canyon in Texas, Coronado divided his forces. The main army returned westward to the Rio Grande, while Coronado continued northward with a smaller reconnaissance party of about 30 horsemen, several foot soldiers, priests, and guides. This select group moved through portions of the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles and entered present-day Kansas. They followed Indian trails and crossed rivers. Around late July of 1541, they reached a river flowing northeast, which the chronicles identify as the Arkansas River, near its Great Bend in central Kansas. Quivira consisted of villages with grass-thatched houses, fields of corn, beans, and squash, and inhabitants who went nearly naked in summer. No gold or silver was found beyond a single copper pendant. Coronado remained in the area for approximately 25 days, questioning locals about lands farther north or east. From Quivira, the party advanced roughly 25 leagues farther to a place called Harahi. Chronicles describe Harahi as having larger settlements along a bigger river, with more water and inhabitants than Quivira. The people there appeared similar to those in Quivira. El Turco was accused of misleading the expedition and was executed. Disillusioned, Coronado erected a cross, inscribed a claim of possession, and turned back via a more direct route to rejoin the main force at Teguex for the winter of 1541 to 1542. The full expedition returned south to New Spain in the year 1542. The connection of Coronado to Nebraska rests on interpretations of the expedition chronicles, particularly latitude references and descriptions of the northernmost reach. Coronado wrote in a letter dated the 20th of October 1541 that Quivira lay at about 40 degrees north latitude, approximately 950 leagues from Mexico City by the route traveled. The modern Kansas-Nebraska border lies at 40 degrees north. In the 19th century, Nebraska historians and writers widely accepted that Coronado had reached the Platte River in what is now Nebraska Territory. General J.H. Simpson, in his report published in the Smithsonian Annual Report for the year 1869, asserted that Coronado, with a small party of 36 picked men, continued northward to the 40th degree of latitude, where he reached the province called Quivira. Simpson concluded it was exceedingly probable that Coronado reached well toward the Missouri River region. In the year 1880, James W. Savage read a paper before the Nebraska State Historical Society, in which he argued that Coronado reached the Platte River in August of 1541. Savage stated that Coronado caused a cross to be erected upon whose base was carved an inscription recording his arrival. Savage and others cited earlier scholars such as Albert Gallatin, who in 1848 wrote that Coronado appeared to have proceeded as far north as near the 40th degree of latitude. These views aligned with mid-19th century understandings of the expedition route based on the Spanish narratives, including accounts by Pedro de Castaneda, Juan de Jaramillo, and the Relación del Suceso. Nebraska writers in the late 19th century and into the early 20th century presented Coronado as the first European to set foot on Nebraska soil. The story became part of state historical tradition, linking the Spanish venture to the earliest recorded European contact with the Great Plains lands that formed Nebraska. Some accounts describe the expedition crossing into the southern boundary of Nebraska between areas that later became Gage County on the east and Furnace County on the west. By the 1890s, however, detailed study of the original chronicles combined with archaeological evidence shifted scholarly consensus. Historians such as Adolph Bandelier placed Quivira in central Kansas, near the Arkansas River, around present-day Great Bend or Lyons, with the advance to Harahee extending along the Smoky Hill River drainage, but remaining within Kansas. John B. Dunbar, a Kansas historian in the year 1907, directly disputed claims that Coronado reached eastern Nebraska after personal inspection of central Kansas sites. Monsignor Michael Shine made one of the last mainstream assertions in Nebraska history in the year 1916, that Coronado entered the state, but the weight of evidence pointed elsewhere. Archaeological findings, including possible Spanish artifacts such as chainmail and bridle parts, have been associated with 16th century sites in central Kansas. Most modern scholars conclude that the northernmost confirmed reach of the expedition remained in Kansas and did not cross into Nebraska. The latitude reference in Coronado letter is now viewed as an approximation based on the instruments and calculations available in the 16th century, rather than a precise measurement of the Kansas-Nebraska border. Despite the revised scholarly position, the traditional association of Coronado with Nebraska persisted in popular accounts and local history for many years. Nebraska historical publications have noted how the earlier belief shaped understandings of the state European discovery, even as evidence accumulated for a Kansas terminus. No documented European exploration reached the central Great Plains before Coronado 1541 venture. His expedition provided the earliest written European descriptions of the immense grasslands, vast bison herds, and the cultures of the peoples encountered in Quivira and Harahee. These accounts described the flat, featureless plains, the difficulty of navigation, and the agricultural villages with thatched houses and cultivated fields. The expedition demonstrated the enormous scale of the North American interior and contributed to Spanish claims over the southern plains and southwest regions. For Nebraska history, the Coronado story marks the beginning of recorded European awareness of the lands that would one day form the state. Although the precise crossing of the modern border remains a point of historical debate, the expedition stands as the first known venture by Europeans into the broader region. 19th century Nebraska historians embraced the view that Coronado reached the Platte River and erected a cross there, establishing him in state lore as the pioneer explorer. This interpretation influenced early maps, writings, and historical societies in Nebraska. Francisco Vázquez de Coronado led the pioneering European expedition that ventured into the heart of the continent in 1541. While contemporary analysis of the chronicles and archaeological records locates the farthest advance in central Kansas, the long-held Nebraska tradition places his party on the Platte River. Either interpretation confirms his role as the first known European explorer to approach and potentially enter the territory of present-day Nebraska. The venture opened the Great Plains to European knowledge without the discovery of the expected riches, but with lasting observations of the land and its features. Coronado returned to New Spain in 1542, ended the expedition, Yet his journey remains a foundational chapter in the exploration history of the American interior, and specifically in the recorded beginnings of Nebraska history. In conclusion, Francisco Vázquez de Coronado stands as the first known European explorer whose expedition ventured into the region that became Nebraska in the year 1541, bringing the earliest recorded European presence to the central Great Plains and the Platte River area, and opening this land to future awareness and settlement. In Nebraska history, if you found this factual account helpful for your Nebraska history lesson, please like this video, share it with others who want to learn the true story of Nebraska's beginnings, subscribe for more accurate Nebraska history reports, and leave a comment below with your thoughts on Coronado's pioneering venture. Thank you for watching Nebraska History Revisited, and we will see you again next time for another important chapter in the story of our great state.